Fancy Chill Pony at Fancy Chill Pony on Twitter. Back again with DraftKings optimal lineups and stacks for Week 9. Week 8 was kind of a nightmare for looking back at it. A lot of chalk plays, a lot of great drool-worthy matchups that just didn't go through. A lot of players in our optimizer that were projected to have huge games, namely Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and Spencer Ware, all kind of fell apart due to injury or just didn't have good enough games. So that was really disappointing last week, and hopefully we can get back on track this week. To start off, there's a few buys as well, some big names out of the slate today, or I should say Sunday. David Johnson's probably the biggest one, and of course the Patriots are also on bye with Tom Brady and Gronkowski being out. But there's plenty of options. Obviously, there's a lot of good values, and you can still build dynamite lineups even with those guys not being available. So let's just start with the cash lineup here. Starting off with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback. There's nothing wrong there. He's probably going to be one of the most owned players this week across the board. He's thrown about 50 plus times a game. He's thrown 7 touchdowns over his last 2 games. So he's in a really good spot. He's just been red hot, and he's also facing off against Indianapolis. So that's a plus. That's going to be a high scoring game, the highest scoring game projected for the week. And Indianapolis just doesn't have a very good secondary. He should be able to pick them apart with all of his weapons. The running backs, they went a little top heavy here. Which I think is a good play this week. The wide receivers are looking a little value-esque, but when you see the running backs that you get to plug in their place, it makes sense. Namely, Ezekiel Elliott's the primary running back, and Melvin Gordon is the secondary one. Elliott's in a fantastic matchup. The Browns are the absolute worst rush defense in league. Elliott's just been a monster. I just can't see how he won't rush for 150 yards and hopefully a touchdown or 2. He's projected to put up 23.53 this week. So that's, good stuff. And he does, price-wise, he's still not that expensive. I mean, for running backs, he's pretty up there, but 7,900 along with Rodgers, that works out pretty well. Gordon, he's, as you know, very touchdown dependent. His yards per carry still isn't, fantastic. But at this point in the season, it doesn't matter. He's proven every week that he can get it done, either just with volume alone or primarily touchdowns. But, hoping he finds the end zone at least once this week. He should be able to come close, if not to hit that value of 19.65. Theo Riddick's the interesting one. He's only 4,900 this week, so he's a value pick. He's going up against my Vikings, who I found out today are actually without their linebacker, Lance Kendricks. So that's going to open things up over the middle, which is good for Riddick. Even if he doesn't get much volume, he's a great possession receiver. He'll catch a lot of passes out of the backfield, and I think he can do some real damage this week. The receivers, Devontae Adams has just been phenomenal the last 3 weeks. He's getting 11, 17, and then 25 targets. That's just crazy. And he actually caught 20 of them for 157 yards. He didn't see the end zone, which is kind of surprising, but that could happen this week. And although I don't expect 20 targets to happen again, it certainly could. I think the addition of Ty Montgomery coming back will eat into his volume a little bit, but that still is a great play to pair up along with Rodgers here for 5,900. Kenny Britt also has been a reception monster, or I should say a target monster. He's been seeing 35, 31, and 14 targets over his past 3 weeks. The only difference is he's not catching as many of them, whether they're due to inaccuracy or whatever. But that kind of volume you want, and it's safe. So if he catches, even half of his targets, that's pretty good. And he'll get you some points, and he could be a sneaky play this week. Michael Thomas, the Saints, he's quickly looking like a 1A kind of receiver over there. Still only $5,500, so that's, in San Francisco, another fantastic matchup. So these 3 receivers are really cheap, but they they can easily get it done, and they can help fill the stat lines so you can load up on running backs. The Chiefs' defense is looking pretty good. They're going to be kind of a chalky play along with the Vikings this week. So, no complaints here with this cash lineup at all. I think it looks pretty safe. And, if you wanted to take a Gordon out and plug in maybe a higher quality or even a better receiving option, I wouldn't really be opposed to that. But for this optimized lineup, I think it looks pretty good and pretty safe, actually. So, down to the GPP lineup, it's looking a lot the same. There's only two differences here with Tavon Austin being plugged in instead of Kenny Britt. In a GPP format, that kind of makes sense. Britt's, maybe more of the reception and kind of safe play, while Austin has the really low floor and the really high ceiling. So in GPP, you kind of want to take some risks here and there, and Austin is likely going to be lower owned than Britt this week. So, anything can happen. He's facing Carolina, who hasn't been really good against the pass at all this season. So anything can happen, and projecting 15.1 from him, I don't think is too far-fetched. And at only 4,200, that's a nice little pivot play in GPP. The other difference is Stephon Diggs, who I actually really like this week in Minnesota playing against Detroit. New offensive coordinator stepping in, and I think he's going to try to get things back to it the way they were with that offense in week 2 and 3. Just kind of shorter passes, shorter drops, and a lot more volume to Diggs and Rudolph primarily. The running game hasn't been working much, so I can see them kind of focusing on those quick drops, quick outs, and Diggs is going to be a big recipient of that. He was a big factor in their offense weeks 2 and 3. So I don't see why that would change now. I think they're going to kind of go back to what was working before, or at least try to. The GPP stack lineup is also looking pretty much the same, aside from Jordy Nelson being now plugged in. And Ezekiel Elliott's the key guy who's been removed from this lineup. Honestly, I would probably take Gordon out at this point and put Elliott in. Elliott's going to be really high owned. So in GPP, I guess it could make sense to kind of shift and go with Gordon. But I think having a guy like Elliott and then maybe dropping down somewhere else, maybe even off of a Diggs, would be a smart move if you can somehow make that work. But otherwise, this lineup looks pretty good. Jordy Nelson projected for 19.64 at 7,800. His inability to kind of break coverage has been a little concerning, I think, this season, but it hasn't mattered. Rodgers throws the ball so much, and he's going to get his. And his prowess in the end zone is always a plus. So Nelson's a relatively safe pick here, along with Devontae Adams and Rodgers for the stack. The Packers stack, it just makes sense. Highest scoring game of the week. They're projected to win by a touchdown. So 30 points. That's almost a lock, So it's a good stack. It makes sense this week. And, they haven't had much of a running game. Ty Montgomery is back. But that's, he's more of a, I don't know what you'd call him even. He's just kind of a crafty player. So he'll get his carries, he'll get his catches. But largely it's going to be a passing game. There's no reason to try to force the run right now at this point with Green Bay. They're doing what's working. So with that, I am all done. I'm wishing you all good luck this week. And be sure to keep checking into dailyfantasycafe.com for all your great daily fantasy advice, articles, videos, and whatever else you can need. We got it all over there, and the Optimizer is one of the best in the business. So keep tuning in. Good luck this week, and we'll see you next week.